Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce, and we're back for another special interview. I have with us. He's a horror author, and he has a new book out right now on Amazon, and it's called Sons of the Promised Land. I have with us Derek Wachter. Derek, welcome to the Horror Realm.
Travis, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on, man. Listen, tell us a
Pleasure
little bit
being
about.
here.
Yes, man. And now, listen, tell us a little bit about Sons of the Promised Land.
So typically, I'm a horror author. I like to write in cryptic horror, ghost horror, paranormal horror, that kind of stuff. And on occasion, I like to kind of dabble a little bit with historical fiction stories. And in this case, I always wanted to write a story, a Western story. And I wanted to write a story that never really necessarily had a identified protagonist to a story. So Sons of the Promised Land is a unique story because there are three different antagonists of the story and no protagonist, which actually turned out to be a rather interesting story. It turned out to be a rather violent story. So, and it was a different style of writing. So it's a lot of people, you expect your good guy, you expect your bad guy, and you expect there to be clash. And good guy always wins, or sometimes bad guy wins. But in this case, there are no good guys, so kind of makes for a unique story.
And that's an interesting concept because, like, especially as a writer, and I mean, and me as a reader, when I read a bad guy that I can relate to, that is when the writer is knocking out of the park.
It's going to be an interesting read, I can guarantee you that. And it was a lot of fun kind of putting together the history behind it. When I do any kind of historical work, I do a lot of like the research in the background. So in this case, it was a lot of research for what the time and the era was in Colorado at the time, in the Montrose area. So a lot to do with like the Ute tribe, a lot to do with kind of like the old Western days, traveling over from the East Coast, coming out to the West, pioneering, if you will, and then a little bit of dabbling with the business of the American corporate business at the time too. So kind of combining those three elements into a story regarding property, regarding land. In this case, when the Ute tribe had their land taken from them, when the farmer in this case purchased land and wanted to keep his land for the sake of his family namesake and his profession and what he knew. Corporate America coming in and wanting to buy and buy and buy more land at a cheap price. So the conflict between the three really resulted in a lot of violent clashes. And I don't know if I would have had as much violence in the story if I would have had one protagonist and two antagonists, really. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote for the three antagonists of the story and no protagonist, it turned out to be a really interesting write. And it turned out to be a really long story because there's three different antagonists, there's not just two. So there's the conflict between this group and that group, the conflict between all three at the same time. It was fun. I really enjoyed writing this story. It took about 9 months to write, and that was consistent, steady writing for at least an hour to 2 hours a night. So I had to have a lot of patience with the story.
And Kit Kat is making an appearance. She's making a lot of noise. Now, so was it tough though? I mean, and it was fun, but was it tough to have to jump between the three characters, the three groups?
It is, because you try to make it all make sense, right? So you try to make it sound like, well, this sounds really legit that this farmer is having this issue with corporate America coming in at the time and trying to buy out everything for themselves. But at the same time, the Ute tribe is also having a difficult time working with the farmer. And at the same time, corporate America is affecting the Ute tribe as well. So it's trying to tell a story that enwraps all three of these different characters, all three of these different organizations in the story, and kind of trying to make it make sense. So it's a lot of it's a little bit of back and forth between the three groups in the story, while at the same time creating new conflict as we go. So that's kind of where the violence comes in to play, because the violence kind of helps turn the page, and it makes the conflict make sense at the moment and leads up to the next conflict that they have.
Now, so when you were writing this book, did you already have like an ending in mind, or was that something you had to work towards?
I did. I did have an ending in mind. And the ending in mind that I had is I wanted to ultimately tell a story that would show what would happen when you let your greed control your life, the things that you can lose, the loves and the family that you can lose, and the friends that you can lose if you allow greed to control and motivate you in life. So that's what I was aiming for in this story.
And that's something that's powerful, and your story actually originates even today. I mean, you look at society today, how greed has taken over this country and world.
Right, and the people that it can affect too.
Now, I have a question, because a lot of authors I have noticed now are doing book series. When you write a book, do you close your story for the most part, or do you leave it open for another edition?
That's a good question, Travis. I tend to usually try to close my story because I like to move on to the next story, because in my mind I've got like all these different ideas that I want to put out on paper. So, or in this case, Word document. But some of my stories I've considered, like some of the older stories, like Cabin at the End of Herrick Road is a Sasquatch horror story. And that story in particular, I could easily go back and revisit and make a sequel to that. Some of my older genres some of my older stories, I really do feel like I could go back and make a sequel off of it. As far as a series goes, I don't believe so. I don't think that would be a possibility, but a sequel would definitely be in the cards. And I've thought about that for that book in particular that I had just mentioned, The Cabin at the End of Herrick Road. I've thought about it for Black Flags, which is a pirate adventure story. I've thought about it for Crete, which is a Greek mythology horror story set in a modern day setting, using like a minotaur monster as an antagonist.
Oh, nice.
So that could possibly be a sequel as well. So I don't generally tend to write for sequels or series, but it's always a possibility that I can go back and revisit and add more to a story and make it into a sequel.
So what are some things for right now? I mean, right now, listen, as an indie horror author, it is tough because there's a lot of writers out, which is a good thing. But at the same time, like if you're an indie horror writer, you're writing something good, it's hard to stand out. What are some things that you do to promote your work? That could be for someone who's a new writer or thinking about writing a book.
Right. And that's a great question too, Travis. So I've been a writer for about 6 years now, 5-6 years. I didn't know a lick about writing and anything about the process and the business of writing when I started. I was actually at my family cabin here in Washington State, and I got bored one afternoon just watching TV in the living room. Family was off playing cards somewhere. I was alone in the living room, and I said, what the hell? Let me grab my laptop. I'm just going to start typing. And that's where it all started for me. So I learned through making mistakes. And some of the mistakes that I learned from are like publishing, for example, with vanity publishers compared to like self-publishing. Editing was another mistake that I had made when I was first starting writing out, and making sure that I secured a good editor. ARC readers, so folks that would read your work and see if it makes sense to them. Now, granted, I went back and I made a lot of changes and a lot of fixes to the books that I've written at the very beginning, but that was a big mistake that I had made. So I learned from making mistakes as I go. And something else that I learned is that when you're a writer, 20% of the work of being an author, being a writer, is actually the actual part of writing. You're writing your story and you're taking your notes and you're doing your rough draft and all of that. 80%, I would say, is dedicated to the work after you publish. So getting out into the community, going out to shows, and that's what I do. I like to go to book signings and book events, promote on social media websites, through my own author webpage. I go to like Comic-Con events, Sasquatch Horror Comic-Con events. There's a Horror Con event in Seattle in May that I'm going to go to and put my name out there and put my books out there. So, like I said before, being a writer is, I would give it 20% writing and then 80% the actual promoting of your work.
And I totally agree with you because before I had, this YouTube channel, and I met so many amazing indie horror writers. I went to horror conventions all throughout the country. I still go to horror conventions. I love them. And I bought and fell in love with so many indie horror authors that I just, they had a table sitting there at Monster Mania or something, and like they were like, told me about their book. I'm like, well, this looks interesting. And I read it, and then I started following all their books and purchased all their books. And like and I'm a huge autograph. Like I like physical media, and I like stuff getting autographed. So to actually get to meet the author, have a conversation with them, and he also personalized and autographed your book, it's an amazing thing.
That's the experience that you have to work towards as being an indie author, and you have to be open to the criticism that comes with it too. Not everybody is going to like your story or they're going to like your work either. So I remember when I first started out, I would get like a good review, and then a bad review would come in, and I'd say, "You son of a bitch, you don't know what you're talking about." But looking back on that now, I learn as an author and a writer that I get more feedback from the bad reviews than I do the actual good reviews, and I can improve off of that. So taking that criticism and kind of learning from it is something else that you can do if you're looking to start working towards being an author or a writer yourself, and whether you're doing poetry or fictional work or biography work or whatever you're writing towards, be open to that feedback too. But being, like you said, being out there in the community and going to book signings and book events and actually meeting the authors and meeting the writers, meeting the readers face to face at these shows, that makes a big difference. That's a huge difference.
You definitely got to put a work in because I think I met you through an indie horror author Facebook group, and I'm pretty sure we're in a lot of the same ones. And I see so many new horror authors. They put a book out there, they don't get that instant success they're looking for, and they make posts like, I'm giving up.
Right.
I'm done. I'm and like I feel like you doing anything now, especially in 2025, where there's such an abundance, even when it comes to a YouTube channel like I have, you got to think about the long game because that instant success is not a thing anymore.
Right. And I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think a lot of first-time writers, they expect to make, I don't necessarily say millions, but they expect to make money off of it, and it just doesn't work that way. And I've written 9 books now. I'm working on my 10th, and I don't have any bestsellers in the New York Times, or I don't have any like golden nominations. Like I have like some awards for my books from like local book awards and things like that, but that's not what it's all about when you're being a writer. If you want to be a writer, you got to have a passion for it, and you got to enjoy what you're doing. You got to enjoy telling stories, and it's not, as far as I can speak for myself, I don't personally write to make a living off of it. I write because I enjoy doing it, and I like being out there meeting people and sharing with people the story that I wrote, whether that's Sons of the Promised Land or whether that's Solipsism or the Cabin at the End of Herrick Road. Here's my stuff. If you like it, great. If not, let me know why. Maybe I can learn from it and improve myself, continue to grow myself as a writer.
Now, of all of your books there that you have written, which book would you say would make a great movie? That if Hollywood's looking, they want to adapt one of your books into a movie, which one would you think to yourself, like, this is definitely the one?
Well, that's also a good question, Travis, because I'm actually trying to learn more about screenplays. I'm kind of at that point in my writing career now where I want to learn more about screenplay, adaptation from book to movie, and that process and what that looks like. I know that when you adapt a screenplay, you got to consider cost and expense. And for example, a book like Sons of the Promised Land would probably be a really major expense. You're going on location. You have a lot of different actors and workers. The times and the kind of clothing that you'd like, the wardrobe that you'd have, the equipment that you'd have to have, probably take a lot of money. I'd love to see that one turned into a movie someday, but I'm not sure if that would be a possibility. One book that I was thinking of, actually two in particular, one of them I'm going to publish here in the next month or so, and the other one's been published for a little while now. The first one is Solipsism, and that one is published right now. It's a mental health psychology horror story. A lot of hallucination, delusion, that kind of a thing. It's a short story, so the screenplay wouldn't be too terribly long, but it's one antagonist and one protagonist in the story. So that would be something really easy to make. Plus, I really like that story, and I like how it turned out, and I like how it ended with how it turned out to be like a complete 180 from what chapters 1 through 11 led you to believe. And then chapter 12 is just a complete swing around. So kind of introduces the concept of the psychological condition of solipsism anyways. And then the other one would be While We Wait, which would be another short story, more of like a crime horror story. And I don't want to give away too much of it because I haven't published that one yet. But that one would be also another protagonist, antagonist, and a few different actors to fill the roles in between. So really, the short stories probably would work best for a screenplay and for a movie adaptation. But I would love to see all my other books just get looked at to see, because I think, as a writer, that's probably your at least for me as a writer, that would be like the epitome. Like, I've published, I've edited, I've done all of this stuff. I've worked and created a screenplay, and here we are at the pinnacle of my work, and we're taking this one in particular story and we're making it into a movie. How cool would that be?
Oh, that'd be super cool. Now, why don't you think Hollywood, when it comes to trying to adapt books into movies, why don't you think they go and look into the indie horror authors realm? Why is that?
I'm not sure if indie authors really know too much about Hollywood, about book adaptations from book to movie. It seems like indie authors or actually just authors in general, who go through a traditional publisher, not necessarily a vanity publisher, but actually a well-known publisher, have a leg up, because they have folks that are doing the work behind the scenes for them, and they have the work, those editors and those publishers pushing that work towards screenplay writing, towards they're putting it in front of the producers who are creating like short films or major motion films. Indie authors really don't have that option. We have the option to publish onto Amazon, publish onto Ingram, Barnes and Noble, but again, a lot of the work that an indie author does after the process of publishing really is really dedicated to going to shows, book signings, pushing your image out on social media like TikTok and Facebook, pushing your brand out at Comic-Con events and com shows. really it feels like you kind of got to get lucky. If you meet the right person, or you get introduced to the right person, or you start talking to the right person at some of these shows, and boom, you're in like Flynn, you know. But I don't think we really have the same amount of opportunity that someone that would be going through a traditional publisher would.
But I mean, I would think right now if I was a Hollywood production company, right, and you want to save costs, I think I would go into self-publish or no name or author indie horror authors and purchase their book to adapt into a screenplay or into a movie, because I feel like most indie horror authors would not ask for millions of dollars. They would just be excited that their movie is going to be adapted into a movie. Their book.
I was just going to say, Travis, I fit right into that category too. I would be just so excited that my book was even being considered for something like that. I wouldn't expect millions upon millions of dollars. And I don't expect millions upon millions being the writer that I am right now. I just enjoy telling a story, and to adapt one of my stories into a movie and to kind of see that play out in real life, off the pages and onto the screen, would be really a cool experience. It really would be. And that experience alone would be reward enough for me. It really would.
It would draw. It would drive a lot of people who never read your book, but to watch the movie, to reading your book as well.
Right, exactly. Like, I wouldn't sit down and say, well, I don't like that you're offering me 1.2 million. Can we make it about 2.7 and then we can call it good? Like, yeah. I wouldn't negotiate or anything like that. I'd be like, yeah, go for it. Price? Yeah, send me a check. But whatever you want to put on there, just send it and mail it to me and have at it. Make whatever you want to make out of it.
But would you be pissed off, though, if they completely, like screw your whole entire story up? Like, the movie is, which I've seen many times, where, the book is one story and then the movie is something completely different.
Mm-hmm. That would be really disappointing. It kind of reminds me of the Jurassic Park book by Michael Crichton, when Crichton wrote in the river raft scene in the book, and the movie completely just cut it out, and they had nothing to do with the river raft scenes. And it was that part was just so disappointing. I would have loved to have seen that adapted into a movie and seen what Steven Spielberg could have done with that. But it just never happened. It's like they cut little parts of the books out like that they're always just going to make the book that much better than the movie. Yeah. It's just unfortunate, and it's a screenplay thing. It's a money thing. Like, our screenplay, like, a screenplay can only be, I think it's like 80, 90 pages long.
It's like 90 pages.
And if you write a 250, 300 page novel, you're cutting stuff out at some point, and it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. And I think a lot of, like, the good stuff in stories will get cut out just to adapt to the screenplay.
Yeah, because it's all about the budget, and it's all about the visual effects.
It is, right? It totally is.
All right, Derek. Listen, I do this every once in a while. I'm gonna ask you 3 random horror questions. These are your personal opinion.
All right, let's do it.
What is one horror movie franchise that you feel is overrated?
Oh. Wow, you caught me off guard on that one. Oh my gosh, can we come back to that one? That's a good question.
We'll come back
really stumped me on that one. Yeah, let's move on to 2 and we'll come back to that one.
All right, the second one. What do you think about extreme horror? Books and films. Are you a fan? Do you think they go overboard? Do you think it's all about shock value? What do you think about it?
I think extreme horror has its fan base, just like any kind of horror does. I personally try to shy away from gratuitous violence, for example. I like to tell more of a story than actually telling the shock value to a story. And there's an audience for that, but there's also an audience for that gratuitous violence stuff and like the slasher stuff and extreme horror. There's an audience for that, and there's folks out there that enjoy that, and more power to them. So I respect it. You know, I'm not one for it. I like to kind of follow along the story, but you know, I enjoy movies like Predator and Alien and The Thing. The Thing was a fantastic movie because it was a little bit more than just that shock value. It actually tells a good story to it too. But movies like the Terrifier trilogy, yeah, man, that scares the hell out of me. I couldn't watch it. Get 5 minutes into it, and then I see the clown with the little funny little hat on, and I'm out. Can't do it.
I'm in the middle of watching I don't know if you've heard it, but it's called the August Underground trilogy.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of watching that, and it is low budget extreme horror, and I'm like, huh. But I'm doing it for the channel for another show because I was told by a filmmaker to watch it, and we're going to talk about it. But it is tough to sit through.
Yeah, sometimes they can be. Yeah. Sometimes it really can be.
Yeah, it's just that mean-spirited horror that I'm not a fan of. And I'm saying some people are, but I don't like. All horror is mean-spirited, but that mean-spirited horror is just not fun.
Right. And I'm the same way, Travis. I like to kind of delve into the story a lot more than I like to pay attention to like the slasher stuff. Like there's killing in horror. That's just the nature of the business. But it doesn't have to be so gratuitous. Yeah. Let's not detract from the story and put all of our attention to how this knife cleaves somebody into, kind of thing. You know.
I agree. All right. Third question, and then we're going to go back to the first question. Third question: right. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore or horror villains?
Oh man. So Mount Rushmore, we have 4 characters. I have always been a fan of the Thing monster, the alien organism. I've always thought that was a great concept. And the environment, the kind of the isolation in the environment, I think you gotta put the Thing on there. Whatever kind of image that you want to put of the Thing on the Mount Rushmore, slap it on there because that alien should be on there. Number 2 would be the alien, the xenomorph from Aliens. Just such a legendary science fiction horror monster. Like, I mean, you have to. If it were me, I would put the alien monster, the xenomorph monster, on Mount Rushmore as well. The third, you gotta go with like traditional. At some point, you gotta go with some of the traditional monsters, like your Draculas, your Frankensteins, your werewolf. In the third character, I would probably focus more on Dracula, just because some of the stories that you've told, or that have been told about Dracula, have just been absolute classics. From what was it, Nosferatu, I think is what the character is called. But from that point, way back in the black and white era, all the way to the present day, you gotta put Dracula on there in some capacity as the third character, and the fourth one. Oh man, fourth one is tough. I think I would probably fall in line with the Predator monster from the Predator movies. The old 80s, 87, I think, is when Schwarzenegger did the Predator movie. Man, that was just a classic, a fun story to follow along with. And then in 91 or 92, I think it was, when Danny Glover did the second Predator movie. To me, those two just boom, boom, back and forth, back to back. I love both of those movies. Now, everything after that was just, not so much. But the first and the second one, man, just iconic monsters. So that would be what I would put on my Mount Rushmore, just off the top of my head.
But those are definitely good ones. Are you ready to go back to the overrated horror franchise?
Yes, indeed. And I thought about something. I'm not sure if you'd really consider it horror or not, but I'm going to go with the Jurassic Park series of movies that have come out recently.
The Lost World ones?
And yeah, okay, so here's the deal. I absolutely loved the first one. I thought that was a well-told story. I thought Crichton did a great job with the book. I thought Steven Spielberg did a great job with the movie. It was fun to follow along with. It made sense from start to finish. Just a fantastic story, in my opinion. The Lost World with Jeff Goldblum in it, and I think Vince Vaughn was even in it too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Vince Vaughn was in it for a little bit, and but that one was okay. But you could see the series kind of starting to lose that nostalgia that the first one had going for it. But it was okay. And then the third one came out, and then I could tell right away we're in trouble. This isn't going very well. And right, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 came out, and now I think there's some kind of I don't even know how to describe it. I lost interest after the third one. I gave the third one a try. That was it for me. I don't care who you put in the other ones. Like everything else after that, the series is over. It's done.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes. Definitely... I'm not. That's a big reason why I'm not big on series, because you tell such a great story in the first one, and the second one, okay, we're good. Like, it's not terrible, but I like the first one a lot more. And then you get to the third and the fourth and the fifth, and it's like,
yeah. I was. So everybody probably thinks I hate the Terrifier series, which I don't. I was talking to someone today about it, and I said, by the way, if the Terrifier guys ever came on my show, it'll be the greatest interview they've ever had.
Sure.
I don't know why they don't want to come on my show, but the Terrifier series should have just been 2 movies. It really should have been. It should have been 1 and 2, and it should have been done. And then I went to see Terrifier 3, and I'm like, and it doesn't add to the story at all. It doesn't. It's just, it's cash. You're going into that cash grab territory, and then you leave it at cliffhanger for part 4. And I'm like, sometimes movies are just meant to be 1 movie, maybe 2. And I just feel like when you just keep doing that sequel after sequel, and you're just giving the audience pieces, I think at that point you're taking advantage of your fan base and your audience.
I would agree, absolutely, and you're not giving them something fresh.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's probably why movies aren't as big. Like, I don't look to go to the movie theaters anymore like I did when I was in my teens and 20s. Like, that was the thing to do when I was younger. You, on a Friday or a Saturday evening, you go check out the movies and see what's playing. And that nostalgia is gone, because I think a big part of the reason why it's gone is because we don't come out with anything fresh. We keep coming out with the same thing again over and over again. We keep slapping a new name on it. You look at like the Transformers series, or you look at like the Marvel series of movies, and it's
what are Fast and Furious?
The same. Yeah, Fast and Furious. What are they on? Like 11 or 12 now?
Yeah,
or is it even more than that? Like, you just keep
11.
coming out with right. You just keep coming out with the same story and the same process and the same plot, that start to finish, and you're just slapping a new name on it, and that's it. You're putting a new number and a new name on it, but it's the same exact Fast and Furious. It's the same concept. There's nothing fresh about it.
Yeah. And it's sad. I thought for sure you were going to say Scream. The last 10 people that I've asked that question, they've all said Scream. Is like, no, they say that Scream is a series that should have been over with by now.
After the second movie. Yeah.
I agree. it should not be going on to part 7.
No.
Yeah.
First movie, again, fantastic, great story.
Excellent.
It was a
Classic.
fun concept. It made sense. Second one was like, okay, I can get behind it. This is kind of a continuation of the first, but it's still good. It's not bad. And then the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth happen, and it's like, okay, we're done. Nothing's fresh here. Nothing's new here. It's the same concept. We're just putting a new name and a new number on it, and that's it.
But as long as people buy tickets and go to it, they're going to keep on making them, unfortunately.
That's true. I mean, you look at the Marvels and the Transformer series, and folks keep buying tickets to those. So there's a fan base for them, and God bless them. I respect them. If that's your movie and that's what you like to see, then go for it. Have at it. But me personally, when it comes to movies, I like something fresh after a while. You keep filling me with the same stuff over and over again, you're going to lose my interest real fast.
I agree. All right, Derek, where can everyone find you, my friend?
So I'm on Amazon. I self-publish on Amazon, so you can go to Amazon.com. You can Google me and find me at bookstores. You can also find me on eBay. I think there's a couple of my books out on eBay, believe it or not. I am just recently purchased my own ISBN numbers, so now I can also publish on places that are not Amazon. So I can go to Ingram Books and publish there now, and I can also start promoting my books at actual bookstores now too.
Nice.
So again, kind of learning the process of writing as I go. When I said Amazon, you can have the ISBN number, I didn't know that means that only Amazon can sell my book. So once I buy my own ISBN numbers, I slap my own ISBN numbers on the book. Now I can broaden my horizon. I can sell to bookstores. I can sell to Ingram. I can sell to all these different bookstores, Barnes and Noble as well. So, little lesson to anybody out there who's looking to write. Make sure you get your own ISBN number.
That's definitely smart. That's definitely. I didn't even know that. All right, listen, Derek. So blessed to have you on, man. This was a fun interview.
Hey, it was a pleasure being here, Travis. I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Listen, everybody, get over to Amazon and grab your copy of Sons of the Promised Land, and also check out some of Derek's other work. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that is Derek Wachter. We'll see you next time. Take care.